Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Danny Vittori. Welcome back to the Lynn Lowdown, and today we are welcoming back on the Mayor of the City of Lynn, Jared Nicholson, to talk about the Kings Beach UV pilot program. That was a long intro, but thank you so much for being here, Mayor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So we're here, of course, to talk about the thing that everyone was hearing about this summer, the Kings Beach UV pilot program, but now you have the data from it, you're starting to collect some facts. But before I get to that, I'll back up a little and say, the pilot itself ran for about 2 months this summer. That's correct, June to August?
Yep.
So based on that, and the big thing about it was a joint operation between the Town of Swampscott and the City of Lynn. And how important was that collaboration? Because, of course, Kings Beach straddles both areas.
Yeah, it's critical. I mean, so this has been a problem for the region for decades, right. And we are really committed to solving it, but one of the reasons that it has been so hard to solve is because it cuts across different boundaries. It's geographically it's shared by Swampscott and Lynn, and then there's a lot of agencies involved as well. The beach is actually owned by the State Department of Conservation and Recreation on the Lynn side. The culvert, the pipes on the Lynn side are owned by the Lynn Water and Sewer Commission, which is technically a separate agency from the city. And then operationally, to pull off this pilot, there was a lot of different departments, even within the City of Lynn, that we work with. Inspectional Services, the Department of Public Works, Department of Public Health. And so there was a whole lot of collaboration that went into making this a success. Mm-hmm.
Which is a big thing, because getting all those people sit down at a table, you went through many different ideas to see which would be most effective, and you settled on UV, how that worked, because Kings Beach had been ranked one of, I think it was the second dirtiest beach in the state, so that's not a good statistic to have.
Exactly. No, we were tired of having our beach be one of the worst in the region, and this is after a heralded cleanup of the Boston Harbor, where Massachusetts is generally really proud of its beaches, and Kings Beach has been an ugly exception to that, and we want to fix that.
And then Kleinfelder was the company that collected and now released this report about the data that came out, and one of the big numbers that strikes you is they were testing at 4 different places, and now the bacteria level, it only exceeded what the state deems appropriate 8 times this year. Last year it was 33, the year before it was 43. So that's a huge downtick in the numbers for keeping that beach safer.
Yeah, so that was, I think, a big headline result. And again, there's a lot of different variables that go into all of these outputs. Of course, yeah. But we saw that as an encouraging sign. And one of the things I mentioned too is that this summer was relatively drier, which means you're going to have less of a problem with bacteria. But even compared to years that had comparable levels of rainfall, there was an improvement in terms of the number of exceedances. So we found that to be really encouraging.
And you say when it gets wet, when there's more rain, that's where the water becomes more difficult to clean because of the turbidity and everything. So that was I know a major problem going into it that you sought to solve, but that seems to be the most challenging thing to figure out, is how do you clean the water when it's this high, when it's this churned up? Right.
So and the turbidity, that's how clear the water is essentially, and that's that's an indication that's really important for the UV specifically, because if the water's not clear, the UV can't get through it to kill the bacteria.
Right.
The issue at the beach is the dry weather flow that's running into Stacy's Brook, this natural brook that runs all down the Lynn Swampscott line and into the ocean, is getting dry weather flow that has contaminants in it.
Yeah.
Beaches in urban areas are always having issues with wet weather flow when it rains, and a lot of urban beaches you don't go in when it's raining or right after it's raining.
Right.
But the problem at Kings Beach is that it wasn't just after it's raining; it was all the time that it was contaminated. And so figuring out how to address the dry weather flow has been the real push of this UV system and the alternatives. And as always, the main strategy has been and continues to be source elimination, illicit discharge detection elimination. But we've seen that there is really a potential need for a complementary solution, and right now the UV is the leading contender for that.
You said you have multiple solutions going at once, like when you're looking for illicit connections, eliminating those. Over in Swampscott, it's replacing older or cracked pipes, but this is the complementary solution to that, is add in the UV and see if it can make the outcome even better, which it appears like it has.
Right. I mean, the thing about the source elimination is that there's no timeline on which we know that that's going to be successful, or even if it would be sufficient.
Right.
And so that highlights the importance of doing the complementary solution as well.
And when you went back, you did recently have a town hall about it, going over the data. What has been the public input so far that you've gotten as people are looking at the data, they're seeing what the effect of UV has been? What has been the feedback?
Well, I think there's been a lot of feedback that has been thrilled that that we're so focused on this and are advancing the goals that our residents have to have access to clean beaches. There was, I think there has been appreciation for the innovative approach and support for that. There's been really good questions about the data itself and what we're learning, and I think some feedback for the engineers on interpreting the data, and a good robust discussion. There's also abutters at the site where the temporary pilot that was that felt like the presence there was not welcome in their neighborhood, as well as folks with thoughts and questions about the source elimination and what's going on there and how we could do that better. So I think people are really engaged on this, and we're having some great conversations.
And one thing you even mentioned too was the next steps. Now that you have this data, it goes into a feasibility study of could UV be the permanent solution for this, not just a temporary pilot. Right.
And like I said, the main strategy is always source elimination, but the question is, do we need a permanent complementary solution?
Right.
And for us, one of the goals of the pilot was to help us answer that question. I think we got a lot of great data, so much that I think we want to revisit what a permanent solution would look like, how big it needs to be, whether it could be below ground or partially below ground, because that will then help us determine what kind of site we would need to locate this. And so that's the anticipated next step, is we do a deeper feasibility analysis that would then inform, can give us a better sense of what kind of space we need and what kind of price tag we'll be looking at.
Yeah, of course, because of course the funding is also another big piece of it, because this pilot program was funded, but then going forward, how you have to think about how a permanent site would be funded as well.
Right, exactly. And again, this is a joint collaboration with Swampscott, and so we're doing everything together. We've also gotten tremendous support from our state and federal delegation, Senator Crichton, Representative Armini, Representative Cahill, Representative Reed, as well as our nonprofit partners, Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, Friends of Lynn Beach, Safe Kings Beach, all folks that are really engaged on this issue.
And collaboration is key on an issue, especially like this, that's so large. It's been a problem for decades. You're not going to have just one thing that fixes it. Like you said, it's complementary solutions. It's everyone working together to do it. And you, over the summer too, you had, I think it was interns collecting it. Was it 4 different sites that you collected from daily? That's correct?
That's right. Yeah. A volunteer from Swampscott, Liz Smith, did a wonderful job running this program of college interns getting field experience and doing environmental science out in the real world. And the interns were amazing, and I hope got a lot out of it. And we certainly benefited immensely from having that data.
Yeah, because you go and you collect it every day, how it works, because there were a few days where it wasn't really operational, but for the most part, it was running for the entire period it was supposed to.
Yeah, so it started later than we had anticipated because at the beginning of the summer, I don't know if you remember, there was this big nor'easter, yes. And we delayed as a result the implementation. And then we had, I think, worse than anticipated impact from seaweed in the machines that were running. And so there needed to be some changes made in the field. I mean, this was one of the goals of running the pilot, was not only to get information on the UV technology, but also on the operational realities of running it in the field. Oh. And so that's exactly what we gathered, what we gained.
Because you can run 100 different simulations, but you're not going to know until you put it in the field and see, okay, this is what it does. All right, seaweed is more of an issue, but then you can adjust.
Exactly.
If UV becomes the permanent complementary solution.
Exactly, and that's what the team did. There were some great folks, including our vendors, who helped us put in a grade at the end of the culvert, and also some employees from the Lynn Water and Sewer Commission and from the Swampscott DPW who were out there cleaning the site, making sure it was operational. It was really a tremendous team effort, and we really appreciate all their hard work.
And now going forward, you have the data. What would a timeline look like in terms of you're analyzing all the data, the report's been released? What would be the timeline looking forward now?
It's hard to say the timeline without knowing what we're gonna build, but I think hopefully we're talking about the feasibility study first, which is then going to say, all right, so how much space do we need, and so on and so forth. And then when we know that, if we're continuing down this path, and we're constantly asking ourselves that question, if that's what we should be doing. But if we are continuing down this path, then we'd be talking about a place to site it, like where it's going to be located, and how to pay for it. It'd be hard for me to predict exactly when we'd be able to line up the funding, because we don't even necessarily know yet the order of magnitude of funding we're talking about.
Yeah, of course.
If that changes. The initial estimate that we had received in the 2023 report was somewhere in the range of $25-30 million. But we'll see as that evolves. And so we need to line both of those up for us to be able to proceed. And then there's the design and construction and so on and so forth. So we're talking about a couple years to several years, depending on how that all plays out.
But that's still better than what we might have initially started with, which was we didn't really have any idea when this would be fixed, if it would be in 5-10 years. But now there's at least more of a solution coming from it, right, with the data you now have.
Yeah, exactly. So right, without the complementary solution, where it's just indefinite, like it may never be fixed. That's the question where we have to ask. In the meantime, we are very focused on the source elimination. If that fixes it in the meantime, then great.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
what we would prefer. And we're pushing as hard as we can on that. And there's some more activity coming up on the source elimination. There's also a potential, if the community's desire, to run a temporary system in some fashion again in the meantime, to gather more information and to have the beach open. And those are things that we'll all be looking at in the coming months.
Mm-hmm. All the solutions, because I said you have all the data gathering, and it does seem like it's been a tremendous success. And you would say that too. It did open the beach more. It made the beach swimmable, which it hasn't been for the last couple of years.
Absolutely. It was a tremendous success in the sense that we got some more beach days that people could swim. We learned a lot about the problem and also about a potential solution. And we continued working all together on the issue. There were certainly challenges operationally, like I mentioned, and additional questions that we want to ask for ourselves before declaring that this is all over and we figured it all out.
Yeah.
But in that sense, we definitely believe it was a success.
It definitely appears to be, with all the data and with everything you looked at. And I do have to wrap up in a moment, but was there anything else I hadn't touched upon or mentioned that you wanted to say about the pilot, the process, any of that?
Well, I think it's important for us to take a step back and remind ourselves that Kings Beach is Lynn's only public beach. And as the summers get hotter and folks are more and more cognizant of disparities and access to the environment, what we have happening at Kings Beach is truly an environmental justice issue. And I'm just so grateful for our partners and all those different organizations I mentioned for the opportunity to work together to try to solve it.
Oh yeah, I know. I've been there filming several of the collaborative meetings, efforts, people, local government, state, federal, all of the organizations, and it has been a great collaboration to see. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, where this information takes us and where it goes with Kings Beach.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. And of course, as always, Mayor, thank you for coming on the show. And if anyone wants to learn more information, there is more on the City of Lynn's website. But for now, I'm Danny Vittori. This has been the Lynn Lowdown, and we'll see you next week with more guests.